Hi everyone, thanks for taking the time to be here. I really enjoyed all of your presentations today. And like Jackie said, I am going to talk about privileged Americans and how going abroad really redefined my definition of what it means to be privileged. And before I went abroad, as I was preparing, I heard the phrase a lot, you're so privileged to be an American. And you have to realize that because when you go abroad, it's going to be different, and there's going to be a lot of things that you have to adjust to. And honestly, when people said that, I was kind of insulted, because I took it to mean that they were saying that there was something inherently better about American cultures than other cultures when they said the word privilege, that we had something that other cultures didn't have. And I was insulted by that. I disagreed from the experiences that I had had before. But through my experience in Sevilla, Spain, I gained a new definition of what it means to be a privileged American. In order to understand my experiences in Spain, it's really important to understand just a little bit of the history of Spain. So in Spain, there was a pretty bloody civil war that lasted from 1936 to 1939. Over 200,000 people were killed in this war, and it was obviously Spaniards against Spaniards. So the country suffered a lot in that, and there were over 37,000 people who were just assassinated. After the war ended in 1939, Francisco Franco became the dictator of Spain, and he instituted really strict censorship of foreign media and press, of the citizens. They lost almost all free speech rights, and so this really limited the country in terms of their political and liberal expression development. Also, Francisco Franco was the dictator of Spain from 1939 to 1975. And in that time, there's been a confirmed 114,000 disappearances and 19 mass graves have been found. One of the most famous people who disappeared during that time was Federico Garcia Lorca, who's a famous playwright and poet. And I had heard of all of these things before going abroad, and I was like, yeah, that sounds really bad. But it didn't really affect me. I didn't really relate it to my experiences in America and my life. And then when I got to Spain, it became a lot more real to me. As in Sevilla, there's a wall down by the river. There's a river that goes right through the middle of the city. And down by the wall on the river, there's still blood from where people were taken out in the middle of the night from their homes. The government agents came, took them, and lined them up against the wall and shot them at point-blank range. And that happened in the 1960s, and the blood is still on the wall today. And that really affected me personally as I was studying. I had never thought about what it might be like to go to bed not knowing if in the middle of the night someone was going to come to your house, take you, and end your life. And it could be for something as little as making the offhand comment to your neighbor that you didn't like a government policy or a government official. That had never been a part of my experience, and I had never thought about that before going to Spain. So living in this type of climate and this type of environment obviously affected Spanish society in a lot of ways, and there's so many ways. It really affected it in every way, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to stick to domestic violence, the justice system, and human rights advocacy. In Spain, unfortunately, there's an extremely high rate of domestic violence, which I wasn't aware of before going to Spain. Every 2 days in Spain, a woman dies because of domestic violence. And a lot of times what will happen is the man will come and kill the woman, and if there's children involved in the situation, the children, and then either they will turn themselves into the police or they will kill themselves. And it's a huge problem in Spain. It's not talked about a lot, and part of this is lasting effects from the Franco dictatorship when it was okay to abuse women, and that has created a society where domestic violence is not seen as a serious issue. In the justice system, after having a dictator for so many years, the people after the death of Franco wanted really liberal laws. They didn't want you to be able to have long prison sentences. They were definitely opposed to the death sentence. So now in Spain, the longest sentence you can have for any crime is 27 years in prison. If you're a terrorist, you blow up a building full of people, kill, injure thousands of people, 27 years is the maximum sentence that you'll get. There's a lot of citizens of Spain who feel like this isn't right. However, most of them are unwilling to do anything to change it. And that also relates to human rights advocacy. Living in a culture for so long where it was not allowed to speak up, where there were severe punishments for speaking up, there still exists in Spanish society a real aversion to speaking out on behalf of human rights, not only internationally, but especially domestically. And how I personally became involved in this issue was the disappearance and murder of Marta de Castillo. This is her. She would have been 21 this July, and she disappeared in 2007 when she was 17 years old. Later, her body was found, and she was murdered by her boyfriend at the time, who was also 17. I got very involved in helping, working with a professor, trying to campaign for different changes in the justice system to prosecute her ex-boyfriend who had killed her, and for many years they were unable to prosecute him. And at this time, there were a lot of protests in Madison, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, so that really inspired me to try to get people in Spain involved with the justice system. And unfortunately, although many people were willing to sign petitions, when we had a protest, only 2,000 to 3,000 people signed up to protest, even though tens of thousands had signed the petition. There was a lot of media coverage, and it was really discouraging to me that people were unwilling to step up and demand justice for this girl. So this really changed my definition of American privilege. I now feel really privileged to live in the United States, where I feel like there are a number of people who are committed to activism and human rights advocacy. And I really feel that in a lot of areas of the world this isn't the case, which I didn't realize before. And it's increased my personal commitment to political participation and activism, and my understanding of how political policies can affect the lives of families and individuals and really change a society. And so I now feel very privileged to live in a society where people care about other people and are willing to take time out of their day, away from their family, away from their friends, to advocate for what they feel is right. Thank you.